How do you create something that's different than everyone else? You do it differently than everyone else. Here at Copeland Creative, we specialize in telling captivating stories of wild people, wild things, and wild places. We don't just capture the story, we immerse ourselves in it. We are a diverse, multi-talented media house based in North Georgia, and if you have a story that needs told, we want to help you tell it.
The Redneck Tech Podcast is brought to you by Mike's Archery. Visit mikesarchery.com and use the code REDNECK10 for 10% off anything in their online store. All right. Welcome back to the Redneck Tech Podcast. I didn't quite nail the transition.
That's okay.
From the Mike's Archery commercial to this. There was a little bit of black. I try to nail it, but I didn't do it that time.
I'll forgive you.
This is an episode number. I don't know which episode number it is.
195.
195?
Yep, I went and looked after I told you not to.
You've betrayed me.
No. It's not what that is.
Did you do that to make me look stupid?
Nope.
Are you sure?
Positive.
Okay. Well, it is an episode number, and you'll know which episode number it is because it'll probably say on the title. That's why sometimes I don't read it, or I don't go look, because it says on the Spotify, on the iTunes,
Oh yeah.
on the YouTube, like
Yeah. Because you're not
whatever
you're not
number.
gonna click on one to listen to find out what number it is. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying?
I get you, dog.
We have a new streaming setup here. We've rearranged some stuff. We have rearranged the table to give us a little bit more room width-wise. We've routed some cords that had needed to be done for a long time. We've got some new lights set up to my left, Clay's right. Just trying to streamline the podcast a little bit.
This is my first one of 2024.
Is this really?
It is.
Wow.
Yep.
How do you feel about that?
I have mixed emotions.
Describe the mix.
I like doing the podcast, but I also don't like doing the podcast. So there's the mixed emotions.
Why don't you like doing the podcast?
Because they take time. That a lot of times we don't have. It just so happens this week we have time to do them.
Yeah.
So like if you happen to see a podcast or 2 or 8 of us wearing the same thing, just know we literally had nothing to do that day.
No,
And
I have a podcast outfit. It's this one today.
You wear that for every podcast?
If you see a bunch of podcasts and I'm in the same shirt, it's my podcast outfit. That's my podcast outfit. Yeah, today my podcast outfit is the new all-black Copeland Creative hats, Richardson 112s, which I've actually heard a lot of people like these.
And yours doesn't really look new.
No, it's because I had to wear it doing something. I always do that. I always get a hat, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this will be my nice hat. This will be the hat that I, don't beat up. And then it always happens, I'm wearing that hat on a day that I'm not supposed to be doing anything, and then we end up having to do something. I feel like I was wearing this the day we had to go help Caleb with his...
his septic?
Yeah, his septic. That's why it's got, the orange over here from the dirt.
I feel you, dog.
So I got that, and I've got my Michael David Winery cycling team polo.
That's cute.
Because we had I guess we would call it a location scout earlier this morning for a potential shoot that we might do here at the beginning of next month. And I decided, I like to wear a polo or something when I go on stuff like that, just to look a little bit more professional, I suppose.
Sorry, I was working.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Clay didn't wear a polo today.
No, I never wear polos to work unless I'm leaving work to go golfing.
Yeah, I was going to say, you wear a polo on the golf course, dude. He dresses nicer to go to the golf course than he does to come to work.
Well, you have to. Like the golf course has a dress code.
I think I'd be fine with a dress code. I like wearing a polo and a hat. I have a couple of golf polos that I'd wear.
What's a non-golf polo?
I don't know. Like, this is not a golf polo.
Why?
The material.
Hmm.
It's like a cloth instead of a athletic material.
It's fair.
I mean, I guess at some point in time, this would have been an acceptable golf. Like, I could wear this, but it
Wouldn't
would
be
get
as
hot.
comfortable.
No, yeah. It wouldn't feel as comfortable, I don't think.
Kind of like running a mirrorless instead of a cinema camera. It works, just not as well.
Exactly, Clay. Exactly. Which is a great segue into today's episode where we're not going to be talking about that at all. Gotcha, guys. Haha. You thought we were going to talk about cinema cameras versus mirrorless. We've had that conversation so many times. I don't know
Tired talking about it.
if we could do it anymore. No, today we're going to talk about how to edit faster. We had somebody in the Redneck Tech DMs. I believe it was Lance
They slid.
Brown. I'm
And
gonna go check that real quick while we're talking about that, so I can give them the proper credit that they're due for this idea on what to talk about.
But we had someone.
Yes, Lance Brown. So this is, I guess, since we're here, we might as well read his exact message, and then we'll get into the podcast. But it's how to edit faster. So he said. He had a 19-minute video that took him 5 hours with sound effects, titles, color, and audio. It helped me shave some time using the pancake feature, so the pancake timelines. But he wants to know what other tips that you have to speed things up. Or is it one of those things that you really can't rush to get good results? I have a few keyboard shortcuts that I use, but I can't remember all of them. And then he also has another question about color and LUTs, which we can talk about later. But essentially what he's asking is what's a reasonable amount of time for an edit to take and any tips and tricks to edit faster. So I have prepared a list of things that you can do if you're looking to speed up your editing process.
I have 4 things.
And Clay has a few things as well. But I guess I would start off with saying that a 19-minute video in 5 hours is not slow.
No, like, I mean, when we were doing a lot of TV, we budgeted 10 days for TV, and TV's 24 or 26 minutes, depending on which network.
Yeah, like 23:30 was the last TV show we were cutting, was 23:30 of content.
And we're looking at 10 days. Even if we shoot it and, like, say it's a 5-day hunt, and Ryer shot it and Ryer's editing it, we're still budgeting and planning 10 days for that.
Yeah, usually it would be about a day-ish per segment for me.
Yeah.
So that would be
rough.
Yeah, to rough cut per segment. And then sometimes it would take 5 days, sometimes it would take 3 days, but generally a day per segment for me. And I guess it depends on like what you're editing too. Like if you're editing a TV show, there's a lot more
maybe we
involved.
should talk about that before we get into, like, you know, these ideas and things to do to get faster. Like, are you someone that it is possible for you to get faster, or are you like, you know, I did a 25-minute video and it took me a day, I want to do that in 2 hours? Like, you're probably, unless you like literally want to select every clip you took, put it in a timeline, and then just export it and not do anything to it, you're probably not going to do that in a couple of hours. Like, it's going to take you at least a day and a half, 2 days, 3 days, depending on what you're editing. So maybe we should talk about maybe some of our, like, what we budget, like, time-wise based off what we're editing.
Yeah, I think it can be a tough it's one of those answers that everybody hates, just the same as like what camera should I buy. There's a lot of extenuating factors that may determine what camera is the best for you at this moment. It's hard sometimes to say how fast you should be going because there's a lot of factors that determine the speed at which you edit. Obviously, you've got your technical specs of your computer. That is going to change how fast you are physically able to edit. You've got your skill level in Premiere and that is going to change how fast you as an editor are. You've also got like just a variety of differences in general editor speed. Like in the office, I am not the fast editor. I would probably, most people would consider me the slow editor in the office.
Not most, all. Would
Yeah, all.
consider you the slow editor.
So I'm the slow editor in the office. I would say that Caleb was probably the fastest editor in the office.
Yeah.
And then you and Joe kind of fall somewhere in between.
Yeah. I
And
can be fast if I need to, and then I can
Yeah.
slow down and take time if I need to.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, a lot of why I'm a slow editor is not because I'm not skilled with Premiere. It's because I have
MOCD.
OCD
Yeah.
and perfectionism,
Yeah.
and I nitpick and overthink some stuff.
You're never happy,
Right. So,
which is a good flaw to have sometimes.
yeah, it works out on some things where
Yeah.
you want that, but other times when you do have something, it's like it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
It's hard for me in my brain to be like, oh, that's not a big deal, because everything to me is a big deal.
Right.
Whereas you and Caleb have the ability to be like, that's whatever,
Yeah.
run with it.
Yeah.
So that is a factor, and then also like what kind of video are you making? Like if you give me a podcast and you give me 2 or 3 camera angles, let's say the podcast is an hour long, it's probably going to take me an hour and a half to cut that, just switching between camera angles. And that's probably like
And that's because you're not quote unquote editing or taking anything out. The podcast is what it is.
I'm just
You're
switching,
just switching.
right? So obviously that would be your super fast video to edit, right? Where the amount of time it takes you to edit isn't much more than the amount of content that there is.
Right.
That ratio is almost 1-to-1.
But like on the opposite side of that, like that video is going to be an hour and a half,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to
Or
the podcast is an hour, so your video is an hour long,
yeah,
but it's going to take you an hour and a half to edit it. Where on the flip side, TV, your video is half of that,
mm-hmm.
or just under half of that, 23 minutes, and it could take 10 days,
right.
start to finish. So it's all about.
So that ratio is way more skewed.
It's
And
all
then-
about how much you're actually doing in the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Because technically speaking, you could have a 24-hour podcast, and it's going to take you 24 hours to edit it because that's how long the podcast is. If you're just throwing it in there, switching cameras, and you're done.
Right.
And that's going to take less time than a 24-minute TV show just because of what you're actually doing inside the timeline.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and the complexity of the edit is going to determine a lot of how long it's going to take you. Like, are you doing a lot of graphics? Are you doing a lot of fancy effects work? Are you doing a lot of quick cutting? Are you building soundscapes? Are you doing a lot of sound design? Are you going for a really specific color grade? Are you trying to dial that in a lot?
Are you building a lot of scenes?
Yes. Are you building a lot of scenes? Like, all of that kind of stuff adds to the edit time. And then, you know, you've got something like The Call that cumulatively took a lot more time than the final product was, in terms of, like, you know, the final video was what, 7 minutes, 7
or
minutes?
8 minutes, yeah.
Well, as far as edit time goes, I mean, there's probably weeks in there.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that had to do with some decisions that we chose to make halfway through and things like that.
Right.
But like,
But that's what I'm saying.
I still think like if the version we put out was the version you had in your first rough, and we didn't do 87 versions, I still think it would have taken you a very decent amount of time.
Yeah, and well, that's what I'm saying is like you may have a project that takes you multiple iterations because it's more experimental, or you're trying to nail and dial in a certain feeling or something like that, in which case you know, your editing time is not necessarily linear, where you have no footage and then you build a timeline and it's done, right? You may build part of the timeline, build the rest of the timeline, and then have to go put in another scene, and then rip apart another scene and add something else, combine 2 scenes, shorten another scene, try it this way, try it that way. And so when you look at it, you're like, oh, wow, that took a lot of time. But it wasn't a straight take footage, build timeline, done, send.
Right.
Right? So something like that is going to take you more time. And I would generally say that the more quote unquote creative a video is, the longer it's going to take you to edit.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have a video, the videos that are the quickest are usually information delivery.
Cut and dry.
It's
A and B.
Yeah. I have this thing. I need to deliver you the information on this thing. And the first pass through that project is making sure that the information that is being said is correct. It makes sense. It gets the point across. There's no fumbling, and it's short, not redundant, all that stuff. And then after that, you put the B-roll in.
Mm-hmm.
If it's like a very simple one of those, it's a pretty quick edit. But like you start getting up into a short film, a TV show, a documentary, a docuseries, stuff like that, it can take you a lot more time.
A lot too depends on how much footage there is and if you shot it or not. Like you just had a project that we did where you didn't shoot it, but you edited it, and I think you spent a solid 7 or 8 days just looking and trying to organize through footage, and then you edited the whole thing in like 3 days.
Yeah. I mean, there was,
and that video was an hour long. It was an hour long. You edited it in 3 days, but it took you 8 or 9 days to go through all of the footage. Well, there you go. There's your 2 weeks right there.
Well, 8 or 9 cumulatively.
Right.
Because
yeah.
I would
8 or 9 full working days, 8 hour, 10 hour, 12-hour days.
For the whole thing?
Yeah.
Not just to look at it. I don't think so. No, because I would go for half a day and look at it, and then I'd have to go do something. Then I'd go do it half a day, and then I'd have to go do something. So, like, overall, like if you're looking at the calendar,
you spent
it took 8 days.
significantly more time looking through footage than you did editing it.
Yeah. And I mean that's not abnormal. When I had to edit the pilot for the UNG softball team, I mean there was, how many days did we shoot? 5 days? 4 days? 4 days. 3 of those days we had like 3 cameras. All of those days we had at least 2 cameras. One of those days we had 4 cameras.
And you were there for every day that we shot.
And I was there for every day that we shot, but I didn't see exactly what everybody else was shooting. And it wasn't like we were shooting the same subject, right? I would be over here with one group of players, and you would be over somewhere with another group of players.
It wasn't 3 people shooting one talking head.
Yeah.
It was like one person was on Davo, one person was with this coach doing this group of things, one person was doing this, and then like one of the people would stop what they were doing and come over and help someone else double shoot something, or like one person, like your job was go get scenics and establishing shots.
Yeah, and so I only know what my footage holds and what those players said when I was with them, but obviously I didn't know all of that stuff, and because of the nature of it, you got to go through every single second and pull out all of the bits and pieces, every single little talking segment, every single cool moment, funny moment, interesting moment, good shot, scenic shot, B-roll shot. Like, you got to go through and pull it all. And so it took a significant amount of time on the front end to be able to watch through it all, mentally catalog it, physically catalog it, and then figure out how it all went together and then edit it.
Yeah.
So that being said, there's a lot of variables that go into how long it's going to take to edit something. And it's very difficult to be able to be like, oh yeah, that's fast or that's slow. Like I would be able to tell you, like, if you gave me the footage or I shot it and I knew what it was going to be used for, I could say, okay, that's generally going to take X amount of time.
Right.
Like, it would take me that much time.
Right.
But it might take Clay a different amount of time. It might take Joe a different amount of time. It might take Caleb a different amount of time.
Right.
And if you take that same footage and you want to make a different product out of it, that's going to change the amount of time that it's going to take.
You want a 1-minute hype reel for social media, or do you want a 5 to 8 minute like product video? Because like me, like if I'm, and here's another example, like let's just say I'm making a 1 minute reel. Am I making a 1 minute reel out of 100 clips? You're probably going to take me 4, 5, 6 hours, start to finish. Am I making a reel out of another finished timeline I already have where everything's colored and framed how I want it and everything like that, and all I'm doing is editing it to the music, and I'm just copy and pasting out of one timeline, putting it in another? 45 minutes, an hour?
Yeah.
So you're getting the same product, but I'm starting at different spots. I'm starting with 100 raw clips that I have to do everything for, or am I starting out of a finished 8-minute piece that I'm now making a teaser reel for?
Right. And even within that, like is this like a really simple reel? Like you just want some cool clips thrown in there, music, boom, done, because it's just going to live on social media real quick? Or you want something that is a little bit fancier? You know, like I had Thomas here to help me with trying to get better in the short form game, because that's not my gig. I'm not very good in the short form game. And he's pretty good in the short form game.
Very
and
good.
So, I had him out to the office to kind of pick his brain and see his process, and watched how he did it. And, asked him, like, how long would something like this take you? And a reel might take him 2 or 3 days.
Right.
Right? And it's 1 minute, 90 seconds.
Right.
It might take him 2 or 3 days, but the complexity of that edit and all of the extra kind of graphical elements, all of the sound design, and all of the just getting it all to work together and mesh might take 2 or 3 days.
Right.
Whereas if it's just, hey, get a few clips, put them to a cool song, make it look cool so that we get some eyes and get some likes, like,
Right.
that's not going to take as long.
Right.
So that being said, it's hard sometimes to say how long something should take you, but these are all things to keep in mind, right? You know how long, or your skill as an editor. You also know the capabilities of your computer. Those are known variables. And then when you go into a project, the more projects you do, the better a feel you get for this, but you'll start to get a feel for, okay, I'm going to shoot for this many days. This is the deliverable. This is the style that they want it to be in. Based on these factors, it should take me this amount of time, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, sometimes you get footage or you go on a shoot and it ends up going awry, and you've got to fix some things that you didn't think you would need to fix in post, and that always adds time. But the more you do it, you'll start to get kind of a general sense on how long a certain type of edit will take you.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to develop as the editor, is how long it would take you. Or, like we all here generally know how long something would take on average and how long it might take any one of us to do it, just because we've worked with each other for an extended period of time. So we kind of know all those things.
Right.
And so I could be like, yeah, this will probably take me X amount of days, or Clay, you could probably get this done in this amount of time, whatever. And that's kind of the sense you're going to look to develop. But because that is not a great answer to a question, hopefully it at least gives you guys an idea of some of the variables and the factors that go into it. We're going to go and talk about some ways that you can improve the speed at which you edit. Because it is good to be able to edit faster, and there are things that you can do to speed up your process as an editor. And I'm going to go and talk about some technical stuff, but also talk about some soft things.
All of mine is very structural. Like, my ideas are very like building block type things. They're not so much Premiere things, because the things, like, if we talk about something specific, it's probably gonna be specific to Premiere because that's what we use. But
yeah.
Mine aren't like do this thing in Premiere. Mine are more like structural and process type fast, which is good because it'll be opposite of yours.
I've got a little of both,
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah.
Do you want to start, or you want me to start?
I can start. My first one is having a plan going in and shooting with a purpose.
You stole my sixth one.
I know that because I that's why I said I wanted to go first, because I think that should be like, that's your first step. I didn't want to talk about that one last because I think that should be like
Well, I have a caveat onto mine that's a little different. That would go last.
Oh, okay.
So you keep going.
Well, I think obviously, if you know how to edit, you shoot better.
Mm-hmm.
And the better you shoot, the better you can edit. One, if you shoot with a purpose, there's not a lot of fluff that you then have to go through as far as like, oh, I have a 1 minute video I have to make and I have 700 clips. Two, if you shoot with a purpose and you kind of already know what you want the finished product to be, you can kind of shoot it in that order. So when you get all your clips back into your editing software, they're kind of in order and you don't have to refumble a bunch of things.
Mm-hmm.
And two, you can kind of, I don't want to say, you can kind of edit it somewhat in the camera. You can almost get like a rough cut in the camera, select all your clips, put them in. And for the most part, like, other than like, hey, we have to shoot this thing at night, but it's going to be a morning scene, other than something like that. But I think shooting it with a purpose and having a plan and knowing what you want to do with that footage in post-production before you start shooting it is going to make you definitely faster, like without a doubt.
Yeah, I think for sure knowing what you're going into a shoot trying to accomplish, I mean, is key to figuring out what you want to shoot in the first place. But then, like you said, if you know that what I need to do on this shoot is produce a television show, and it's got to be 4 segments, and I've got 5 days, and we're hunting a deer, then you can already in your head start building out and understanding what do I need to get to accomplish this, and also what do I not need to get, like what can I dismiss or throw out, or like what, even more on a macro level, client by client. Some clients like to see certain types of shots, some don't care about certain types of shots. Some clients want to see this scene, other clients don't care about that scene. So if I have a client who I know wants like a bunch of cool walking montages because they think it's cool, well, then I know I need to shoot a bunch of walking stuff. If I have a client who doesn't care about that and just wants to get from animal encounter to animal encounter to animal encounter, then I don't spend my time shooting a bunch of walking stuff because I'm not going to need it. And then 2, like you said, then I don't have that in the editing room that I have to, 1, go through or look at, and 2, cloud up my decision-making process. Because the more clips you have, the more decisions you have to make as far as, will I use this, will I not use this?
Right.
And so if you go into it with a plan, then you can be shooting to exactly the clips that you need to build the scenes, the segments, and everything else that you need. And then you don't shoot all the stuff you don't need and take that decision away from yourself. Right off the bat. I had another thought that went along with that. I mean, I do it naturally.
Yeah.
Like, I think over time of shooting and editing, you start to naturally kind of piece together edits in your head as you're shooting.
I find myself a lot, like on the Bergara pieces we do, when we were doing Spy Point, the couple things I've done from Chuck, that I find myself even like pivoting my edit while I'm shooting it in the field, because the plan I had going in pivots, obviously, because a lot of what we do is based off of animal movement. And I have this idea going in, and I then have to pivot into something else.
Right.
But I was able to do that in the field quickly, so it allows me to do that quickly in the edit.
Yeah, and you know, like, oh, this is what we were trying to do. This is not going to happen because of X, Y, and Z. This is what's happening. I know what I've shot. How do I then make that turn?
I hear
what do I need? What do I need to do and shoot in order to make this pivot?
Yeah, if you're ever with me on a shoot, I talk out loud a lot, and I'm like, hey, I need to remind me to get this shot because it'll help me get from here to here. Or like, done this with Brian and Billy a lot. Hey, hop off and let's do this real quick because it'll help us quickly get from here to here, and then we won't have to do this whole other 4 minutes of building something, whatever. Like, let me get these 3 or 4 shots. those will get me from here to here, and then we just go right into the hunt or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you literally get in your edit, boom, 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 cut it on a beat, next scene, done.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, I mean, I think.
You obviously want to shoot to where you have options, but you don't want to give yourself options to where, like, enough options to, one, you have to go through all those options in your edit, and two, you have to make a bunch of decisions that really aren't necessary.
And sometimes you just don't need those options.
Right.
Like, it's not an option that you're going to use.
Right.
And you just know that, and so you don't do it.
Right.
Yeah, I would say my first point kind of piggybacks a little bit on that, because it would be the next step in the process. And obviously, like, if you're getting footage that you didn't shoot.
Oh, I know exactly where this is going.
Well, not yet.
No, I know exactly.
Do you?
Yeah.
But you know where it's going, but I'm not about to talk about where it's going yet. I'm just going to say, if you get footage that you didn't shoot, then obviously you can't use the going into your shoot with a plan. But
yes,
you can still, like, ask the people who shot it, like, hey, walk me through what you shot, what happened. Is there any, like, stuff that I should know? Is there anything you shot a certain way to be used a certain way?
right.
Like, you can ask them what their plan was going into the shoot, because they probably had some kind of plan going into the shoot, or they have some kind of plan now, because
Hopefully they had a plan. They didn't just, like,
Yeah.
hey, let's go see what happens.
Well, sometimes it's let's go see what happens. But at least they're giving you the footage now, so you can assume, like, hey, they've got a plan. They know they want something out of it. So then trying to figure out what it is that they want is going to go a long way, because then at least you have some sort of framework as to what they're expecting, so that you know, okay, when I start editing this, these are the things I need to look for. But the point that I would say is going to help you a lot when editing is organization.
I knew it.
Yeah.
I knew it.
Everybody knows it.
I knew it.
Am I wrong, though?
Sometimes.
Sometimes I'm wrong.
Not wrong about this, but sometimes you are wrong.
Oh, yeah, I meant this specifically, not generally.
No, you're not.
I mean, I know I'm not infallible as a human.
I will say I was very anti-Ryer's organization strategy, and sometimes I still am for certain things and about certain things, but I am reminded more and more every day that Ryer was right every time I open something or look at something that Caleb was a part of.
He is the rebellious one.
He
when
is
it comes
the
to
least organized person I have ever met. Mr. Oh, notes in your phone, Mac and Apple, this, that, whatever, like, know your stuff, whatever. Least organized person ever.
very disorganized.
Very.
Digital
And
hygiene is
one of my favorite things to do is open up something on the server and say, "Hey Ryer, will you come check on this for me?" And I open up a folder structure that that Caleb created, which is not a folder structure. It's like one folder with 3,000 things in it, and then just have Ryer look at me, and he just, and then he walks into Caleb's office. Caleb, we literally sat on my couch a year ago, came up with this folder structure, and you're not doing it. If you're not going to do it, that's fine. I'll organize it for you. But if we're going to do the things, we have to do all the things all the time. And that's exactly how it goes. And Caleb goes, "Well, it was just something small that I was working on. No one else is going to touch it. It's going to be fine." And then Ryer goes, "Don't ask me to open that up because I'm not touching it." And then he walks out of his office. It's exactly how it goes. Ask me how many times that's happened that I know that I can walk everybody through the situation.
It's happened a few times. Yeah, I'm well known for being the organization Nazi, which is fine. I'm okay with this. I've accepted that fate. I feel like somebody has to be the ornery bad guy.
The ornery old man.
Somebody has to be like the one who has OCD and perfectionism, and luckily I was born with those things, and I think they were also like bred into me. So, it is definitely one of my pet projects is to try to keep everything as organized as possible. But I don't do it just to be a pain. I do not do it just to be a pain. I promise. I don't do it just to be a pain. Is it funny to me sometimes that it is as painful as it is to them to do it? Yes, sometimes it is funny to me. But I don't do it purely for the sake of causing difficulty. The reason I do it is because I genuinely believe that it makes everything much more efficient.
Especially on our scale.
Yeah.
To standardize it, yeah.
Like, if you are just editing stuff you shot, nobody else will touch it. You'll never have to see it again. It doesn't matter if everything is unlinked. It doesn't matter if whoever opens it up next knows where things are supposed to be or not supposed to be or where things are, then by all means throw this advice out the window and you can fast forward to wherever I stop talking about it. Because it doesn't matter at that point.
I have met people that like edit YouTube, like for their YouTube channel, and they edit off the SD card. They export it, upload it to YouTube. Once it says approved, and they make sure that the video plays on YouTube, they wipe their SD card and they're done. Like they save the project to their SD card. And then like, oh, video's up, we're good, done. Wipe it, next. And we'll be right back because Ryder just had a stroke.
Yeah, that's the most horrific thing I've ever heard. Do not do that. Do not. I almost want to wipe that away from the podcast so that people don't get any. Oh, well, I heard somebody else did it.
Well, luckily nowadays, footage and resolutions and codecs are getting like so big and compressed and things that you almost like SD cards can't keep up to do that. So luckily that at some point it'll become obsolete.
Yeah, that's horrific. Don't do that. Do not do that. Organization is going to help you be faster in some way or another. And I'm not going to go through every single way that I organize things because that would take too long. But generally, having a structure for your projects on your drive that you're using where everything is contained inside of one folder. So when I go and I shoot for a project and then I go and edit that project, all the footage that I shot, the project that I'm editing in, and all of the assets that I'm bringing in to edit, like music and graphics and logos and pictures and sound effects, whatever else, they all live in one folder. So if I had to take that folder and give it to Clay, he could take that drive with that folder on it, plug it into his computer, and he would have everything to be able to pick up exactly where I left off. That's generally the format and the strategy that I try to instill in all of the processes. And past that, I want to be able to hand that to Clay and not have to tell him where anything is. I could just give him that folder and he can open it up and understand exactly what he's looking at. The footage, the music, the sound effects, the project, the final renders of everything. Like it's apparent visually what everything is and where it is because it's set apart, it's named, it's labeled, all that stuff. That way, like if I'm on a mountain somewhere and I don't have service and a client calls and say, hey, you know, we had a last minute logo change, because this happens
All the time.
We had a last minute logo change. The logo that's at the end of this release video that we need for tomorrow is different now. We need to replace this. And if I'm on a mountain somewhere, I don't have service. So Clay then has to go be able to find that project on our server, open it up, make sure everything links, replace it, and then export it. And if it's not well organized, that might take Clay 30, 45 minutes to an hour. If it's well organized, it may take him 10 minutes.
It could take longer to export the video than it does actually do it.
Right. So my general rules of thumb are everything that you need for that project to be fully rendered and delivered should be contained within one folder that you can drag anywhere else. Now, it should be organized within that folder, but as long as everything's in there, that's your first step.
And
I obviously I have folders in, like there's a master folder that has the thing, and there's categories inside of that folder.
That's what I was going to say.
That you put the different things in. So
you organize inside of the organization.
Right.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, you drag that master folder, it has everything. And like I have pictures of how we organize it. I feel like we've done videos on it before, but I mean, generally speaking, you've got a master folder, you have a footage folder, you've got an audio folder that's going to have music and sound effects and stuff. You have a project folder that has your Premiere Pro project, your autosaves, stuff like that. And then you might have a graphics folder that has logos and titles and lower thirds, stuff like that. And then you have a masters or a deliverables folder that has what you're actually giving to the
Your
client.
exports, yeah.
And if you have that stuff, you should be good. And then obviously, if you're shooting 5 days worth of footage, you want to be organizing that footage as you shoot it in a way that's not just dumping it all on a folder.
And the way that that helps you become faster is if you find a folder structure, I equate it to like archery or golf. Like, yes, there probably is a perfect way to swing a golf club or draw a bow or organize footage, but that's not going to work for everybody. Find a way that you like to do it and what makes sense to you and is comfortable for you, and do that every single time. Because the more you do it, you'll dump footage faster, you'll transfer footage faster, you'll be able to find footage and graphics and all that kind of stuff faster, which then makes you faster in your edit.
Yeah, and further than that, like so past organizing all your stuff before Premiere, now you open up Premiere. And if you've done a good job of organizing your footage, it should be very easy for you to open up that footage and know exactly what's what. If you had 5 days of hunting with two shooters and each of them had 3 cameras, that should be obvious, because I pull all that footage in from my hard drive. It was already organized. And now once I pull it into my Premiere Pro project, it's organized the same way. So I know that, okay, this is what happened on day 1. This is what happened on day 2. This is what happened on day 3. This is what happened on day 4. And on day 1, Clay was filming this person and I was filming this person. And here's the main camera and here's a GoPro. And I know that the GoPro is going to be relevant in these situations, but the rest of it's going to be on the main camera. Oh, somebody shot drone today. There's drone footage from that day. Oh, there's a second angle because Clay was in a tree. I know that this second angle here goes with all this main angle stuff. And that's going to make you so much quicker as an editor because it provides context. Footage with no context is very difficult to edit. And when you get footage, especially if you didn't shoot it, if you shot it, you already have the context because you were there. If you did not shoot it, or maybe it's been a year or 2 years, right? Think of how much you forget about what happened on a day a year from that day, right? You may remember some parts of it, but you're not going to remember every little detail and everything that you shot. And sometimes, honestly, like you go on a trip and you shoot stuff and things get convoluted and everything starts going not according to plan, because that's how everything always works. And all of a sudden you're a year later and you're wanting to edit this thing and you're like, ooh, I forgot what goes with what. So context is very important because it gives you the framework of what you have to work with. And like if you have the plan of what you're trying to accomplish and then you have the context in which all of these shots fall, now you understand how you need to start going through that footage in order to edit it, right? Like if I'm given just like a pile of footage and I wasn't on that hunt, it's going to take me a certain amount of time just to figure out how that footage, like what was shot on what day, who was with who, what were they doing, are there any additional cameras that go with this day, where are those additional cameras, how many days were there, on what days did this, that, or the other thing happen. And that's without even knowing what happened on what day.
Right.
So having that basic framework right when you open and edit can save you anywhere from 30 minutes to hours of just trying to figure out how that footage goes.
Right.
You know, because if you just give me a pile of footage, I then have to reorganize it because I have to understand how that footage was shot, what was shot when, who shot it, what happened, all that stuff before I can even figure out how to edit that. Because if I know that, okay, so we're doing a YouTube episode and it needs to be 15 minutes, well, if I've got 5 days worth of footage of 2 people, that's going to change how I structure this YouTube edit versus it's 15 minutes. I've only got 1 day of footage. Okay, now I know I need to structure it a little bit differently. So that's why being organized on the front end is very helpful. If not for you editing it later, but for somebody else if they have to deal with the footage. And then inside of Premiere, being organized helps because you just know where to find things, right? If all of my footage has been organized by day and by camera and by shooter, and all of my music is in a separate bin, and all of my sound effects are in a separate bin, and all my logos are in a separate bin, and my lower thirds are over here, this, that, and the other thing. Well, when I need to go find this piece of footage to put here, I know where it's at. When I need to go find this song to put here, I know where it's at. When I need to go find the logo or the lower thirds to put in this place, I know where it's at. And that saves you time of searching around, scrolling through bins, and just looking for things, which from instance to instance is 30 seconds to 1 minute. But you carry that throughout days worth of editing. I mean, you might be saving 15, 20, 30 minutes cumulatively over the course of a day of editing or 2 days of editing or 3 days of editing by not having to go find things. You know, I equate it to the equivalent, like being, if you have a bunch of clothes, right, which everybody's got a bunch of clothes. I'm gonna say this like I know that some people don't do this, but like you probably fold your shirts and put them in a certain drawer. You probably fold your shorts and put them in a certain drawer. You might hang up certain shirts in a certain place.
All my shirts are hung up in color order by type.
Mm-hmm.
So all of my T-shirts go white, gray, black, blue, green, whatever by color. And then all of my long sleeve shirts do the same thing. And then all of my polos do the same thing. And all of my dress shirts do the same thing. And all my jackets do the same thing.
See, Clay gets annoyed with me for being OCD, but he's also OCD because my closet isn't as organized as that. I have it separated by like type. Like I have my polos, I have my button downs, I have my T-shirts, I have shorts, pants, socks, on it, you know, all that stuff. And then I have a separate section for hunting things, and those are organized by like type, like pants, shirts, outerwear, fishing, stuff like that. But generally speaking, everybody's got a way that they organize their clothing, right? And the reason that you do that is so that at 5 o'clock in the morning, when you have to get up and you have to put clothes on, you don't have to go rifling through a pile of clothing on the floor and find it piece by piece. Like if you've got all your clothing and you know, okay, well, I want to wear the blue shorts with the red shirt and this hat, and my socks are here, my underwear is here, and you just go to each of those places and you pull the thing, it takes you 5 minutes to get dressed, 2 minutes, whatever. Okay, you got a pile of clothing, 10 minutes. It's taking 10 minutes to get dressed because you got to rifle through that entire pile looking for what you want.
If it's not wrinkled.
If it's not, yeah, I mean, I think that's where the analogy starts to break down. But it's the same concept, right? You would never just have all of your stuff for hunting. Some people do. Okay, I say this and some people do this. And I don't know how you do it. But some people just have a pile, like a room, and everything's just thrown in the room. And when they want to go get something, they got to rifle through the whole room and go find this, that, and the other thing.
I've never known Ryer to have a pile of something, though.
I will have categorized piles. Like it might be like my shirts, right? They're not really in a pile. They're hung up. But like I don't have them organized by.
We're going deep on this one. I knew as soon as you said organization, this is how this was going to go.
Well, after this,
I need you to organize your thoughts.
I did. The thought thing is difficult. I don't have bins for those. That's ADHD.
You lost me at thought.
Yeah. No, I have like categories. So everything for a certain category will be in a certain location. So like all of my T-shirts are in a certain location. And all of my like button downs are in a certain location. But they're not organized like yours. I don't do it by like color. But
I stay fitted though.
You do. You do stay fitted. You're much more physically organized than me, but like digitally, I'm very organized.
That's fine. That's fine.
But yeah, okay. I'm done with organization now. You can go on to your topic.
My next one is in Premiere, but you actually haven't started editing yet. So do you have something that should go before that, or?
I have like a couple things for project setup.
Yeah, that's kind of what
Like
that's
technical specs.
That's kind of what mine are.
All right.
Mine aren't technical specs. Mine's like actually setting up Premiere, like specifically. I would suggest setting up. Premiere has what's called workspaces, and your workspace is like the different windows you have open to see different things. I would suggest setting up custom workspaces for different steps of the process. So like I have a editing workspace that allows me to see my source monitor, my program monitor, my timeline, 2 audio channels for just rough mixing, my effects controls, my effects, and then my like project window where all of my assets live. And I use that when I am throwing the video together. And then I have a color workspace where, you know, I don't need to see my source monitor. I just need to see what's in the timeline because I'm not coloring the source clip. I'm coloring what's in the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a color panel or a color workspace that has nothing about audio because I don't need audio. I'm doing color. At this point, I'm usually not throwing new clips in, so I don't need to see anything that literally my timeline, my program monitor, and then like Lumetri scopes and effects. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have one for audio that where I don't see anything about color, and it's all my audio effects, audio levels, things like that. And then graphics, like which a lot of our graphics we build outside of Premiere, so we're just bringing those in and just throwing them in the timeline. But reducing the clutter that you see in front of you and minimizing it to what you actually need at that step in the process, like, will make you much more efficient because you're having to rifle through less things to then rifle through that thing again to find what you need. Like, you're not having to sort through windows to find the window that has the thing that you're looking for. You just go to that one window, and it's somewhere there in that window.
Mm-hmm.
So I do that because I never use Media Browser, so I never see Media Browser. I never use Essential Graphics. I never use Essential Sound. That's never in there. Like, there's a timecode one I've never used. There's like 25 or 30 windows, I think, available in Premiere, and I probably use like 10 of them.
Yeah.
Cumulatively. So simplifying what you see will obviously make you faster.
Well, you don't have to click to find the window that displays the information or the thing that you're looking for. The more clicks you have to do to get to something generally is going to take more time.
Give yourself access to the tools that you need at that specific step in the process and nothing more. If you just so happen to need it one time for this specific thing, go get it, open it up, use it, close it right back up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I like that. My project setup wasn't as much about like the view of it. It was setting up your timeline and also your scratch discs. And I guess also we could talk. If you want to be a faster editor, having a faster computer helps. We don't need to get into a whole bunch of specs, but generally more RAM is better. Also, more screens is better.
And not shooting compressed files helps.
Yes.
Like, not going back to the whole mirrorless versus FX6 thing or mirrorless cinema camera, but your cinema camera is going to have less compressed files that are easier to edit, faster to edit. You don't have, like, yes, you can create proxies, but creating proxies adds time that, again, you wouldn't need if you weren't shooting a compressed file. But that's as far as I'm going to go.
Yeah. A more powerful computer means that you're going to have less time waiting for the computer to catch up to what you're telling it to do. It's not going to give you the spinning wheel of death as much. It's not going to lag as much. It's going to perform better, which means that you as an editor will be able to go faster. The same thing with setting up your timeline and your scratch discs. you want to set up your timeline in a way that it's compatible with the footage that you are working with, and it's not having to do a ton of smashing and unsmashing footage in order to work. So basically, you want to be working in usually pretty close to what your delivery specs will be, and hopefully you shot pretty close to what your delivery specs will be as well, for the most part. And then like scratch discs, I generally I have a solid state hooked up to my computer, and I use that as for like all my scratch discs and where my previews go, my audio and video previews and stuff like that. Because basically it just gives your computer multiple pipes to send data through. If your scratch discs and where you're putting your render files and all that kind of stuff is in the same location as where your project is and where your footage is, it can sometimes bog down, especially when doing a lot of like graphics intensive stuff. And so, you got to think about your computer and your hard drive or wherever that project is are like two containers of water, and it's trying to pass water back and forth. And the cord between them or whatever is basically a pipe, and that pipe only has so much capacity. And the more water you're trying to send back and forth between the two of them, at a certain point, you're going to get a bottleneck, and it's not going to be able to work as fast as you might be wanting it to work. So if you can give it another pipe, then that essentially allows it to work faster. And so I can have it reading my footage from one hard drive and writing all of the cache files and previews and all the things that it has to generate in order to edit. I can send those through another pipe to another disk, and that'll sometimes help your computer perform faster.
No, don't get us wrong. Anytime someone gives us a graphics package or a branding kit from their company and they have a bunch of Mogerts, we have the second fastest Mac Studio you can get, and Mogerts still eat up our computer.
Yeah.
So there's things that are going to eat your computer unless you have some 10, 15, 20,000 custom cheese grater PC type custom build thing.
Yeah.
That you can literally just pull the graphics card out of and put a new one in if you want something cool and fancy or whatever. But we have the second fastest Mac Studio you can get. Mogerts still eat it up.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is shooting in a highly compressed mirrorless format and it's like 4K 120 or 4K, like we were given something a couple weeks ago where they shot the whole thing in 4K 120, even like the stuff that was supposed to be regular time, your computer wants to just spit it out. Like there's just nothing. There's certain things you just can't work around without literally spending
time waiting for it.
That or tens of thousands of dollars. Like it is what it is.
Yeah.
So,
which brings me to my next point is if your computer and the footage that you're working with is a major hindrance to your workflow, you can create proxies. You can do a proxy workflow. It's pretty easy. The only things that you're losing is going to be some time and storage space. But if you do it strategically and you know that you have to create proxies, then set them to make at night when you're sleeping. That way you're not losing any editing time. And then, just delete them whenever you're done. But there's a lot of information on the proxy workflow. It's super easy. I mean, you basically just select the clips, right-click them, create proxies. It'll take you basically to Media Encoder, and then when you get back, you just attach the proxies. And it's kind of like finding footage. Like if you unlinked something and had to link it, it's kind of the same process. And then there's, like if you're looking at your program monitor and all those little like the play button and all those little icons that sit right under your program monitor, there's an icon there that is for proxy media. It's like two squares with little arrows that go around them.
like a recycling.
Kind of like a ish.
Yeah.
And that's how you would toggle proxies. It's literally called like the toggle proxy button or something. and you can click it and turn it on. It'll connect to your proxies, and then you can click it and turn it off. It'll disconnect from the proxies and connect back to regular media. And that can be a good workflow if you just have an old computer or you got some footage that your computer just isn't handling. You can use proxies. Now, it can become more complicated if you've got footage that's mixed frame rates, mixed resolutions. Then you have to get a little bit more manual in making those proxies, which could take more time. But again, I would rather spend a little time up front making sure that all my media is going to play than sitting there and having to wait 15, 20, 30 seconds every time I press the space bar to play my timeline for it to start playing, because that pisses me off.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather it just work while I'm editing. Let's see. My next one was going to be learn some keyboard shortcuts.
I have one before that.
Okay.
There isn't a lot of explaining to go along with this. It's when you're editing something that has a lot of takes in it, usually the last take at the end of the clip has the best take.
Generally, yeah.
Because you're not going to, unless like someone's completely fumbling and you have to stop recording, like just to help them talk through it or whatever, you're not going to have a bad take and in the clip and then move on to something else. Like you're going to get it right. And once you get it right, you're done getting the thing right. You don't need it right 7 times and move on to something else. So usually like talking head pieces, when there's 3 or 4 takes, generally speaking, I go to the very end of the last take, and 75% of the time that gives me everything I need. And then that saves you, if it took the dude 35 minutes to get through 3 sentences, you didn't look through all that. You went to the very end where the producer, guy shooting it, whatever, got it right, and he felt that he had everything and moved on to the next thing. So there's that. And then my next one is keyboard shortcuts as well.
Oh, perfect.
So
yeah, learn keyboard shortcuts. Again, the mouse is generally the slowest way to do things. And in Premiere, the nice thing is most things have a keyboard shortcut associated with them. And if it doesn't, you can make one. So if there's a command that you use all the time, there's an action that you use all the time, and you're like, I wonder if there's a keyboard shortcut. There probably is, and if there isn't, you can set one. I'm not going to go through keyboard shortcuts, but learn them. I mean, there's diagrams. Premiere Pro has, like in the preferences, if you go to Premiere Pro in the top left, and then preferences, then keyboard shortcuts, it'll literally show you all of them, and you can look through all of them and see which ones there are.
You can search for the thing that you're looking for, and it will then tell you what the keyboard shortcut for that is.
Yeah, or you just Google it. That's how I learn a lot of them. I Google Premiere Pro keyboard shortcut for this.
Yeah.
And generally it'll come up if there is one.
Premiere Pro keyboard shortcut for making clients spend more money. Command Option Z Shift money sign.
It works. Try it.
Because they stay sleeping on the money. That's why the Z in the money sign.
Oh, I got you. I like that. Yeah, learn keyboard shortcuts. If
you don't want to learn them, do what I did and wipe them all out and just put them where they make sense for you.
No, Clay did that so that I can't sit down at his computer.
I've had those keyboard shortcuts for 5 or 6 years.
I don't believe that. I think that you did that just to spite me.
No. I don't change it to spite you, but I've been like that since I started working here, yeah.
Clay doesn't use the default Premiere Pro shortcuts, and he's got
I use most of them. I do use a lot of them. C for cut, Command L for unlink, Shift D for the apply default transitions, Command Shift D for adding the default transition to the video and the audio, T type tool, the renders enter, gain is G. I changed my speed duration to S.
Yeah, see? It's not S, though.
That's because, what is it then?
I think it's R.
No.
I think so.
That's time remapping.
Yeah, that's what speed
It's
duration
not speed
is.
duration. No, time remapping is what you do to the clip when you want to speed ramp. Speed duration and time remapping are two different things. Like X is the new remix feature. I added that one because it doesn't come standard.
Mm. That would be a useful one, actually.
Yeah.
Because I just option click through it.
Yeah, I
I
don't.
didn't know there was one.
Yeah, there isn't one. That's why I made it X.
Oh, see, look at that.
Yeah. So again, if they don't have them, like especially like when they do updates, they probably the one smart thing they do is they don't go reset all the keyboard shortcuts when they do updates.
Mm.
So if they come out with a new feature like that remix feature, you probably have to go add it to something. So
Yeah. Honestly, I can't. Like, if you asked me to list out the keyboard shortcuts, I could not list them out.
you just heard me struggle.
yeah, I just, like, when I'm sitting there, I know it.
Yeah.
That'd be like asking me to dictate to you how I'm driving.
Right.
I don't really know how I'm driving.
I
I just am doing
I'm
it.
doing all the things that
Yeah.
require me to drive.
Like, I couldn't tell you every single thing that's going through my brain. So learn keyboard shortcuts. That's very helpful. Effect presets are also very helpful. If you have an effect that you use a lot of times, you can actually save the settings that you're using on that effect as an effects preset. And then next time you want to use it, all you have to do is click and drag it onto a clip, and it retains all of the settings that you had set for it.
I do that for like when I open a new timeline. I have one set for 1080 horizontal and then one set for 16 by 9.
In your sequence
or
presets?
9 by 16, yeah. So I literally just go in and it shows me my custom presets. I have one that says 1080 and one that says vertical.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my 1080 timeline and then my 9 by 16 timeline.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, you could do presets for just about anything you want.
Export presets, effects presets, sequence presets, render presets. You could do audio track presets, video track presets, layer presets.
You can do window presets,
Yep.
like workspace
Yeah.
presets. You can make your own. You could do graphics presets. That's what a Mogert is, essentially. You can make your own presets, kind of. I call them templates.
Yeah.
When it's something that's not inside of Premiere, but like all of our organizational stuff, templates. And that way I don't have to create it every time. I just copy, paste it, boom, it's made, and then I start populating it.
Yep.
And that saves you a ton of time. I mean, anything that you find yourself manually doing over and over and over and over again and doing it the same way, like there's probably a way that you can save the way that you like that thing done or looking or set up and save it in a place, like if it's not in Premiere, save it in a place on your hard drive called templates, name it something, and then when you need it, just go copy it and paste it in whatever location you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And like I do that a lot. Like I did that. I've been doing that for a new project we've been working on. As I get assets and things, what I try to do is, like, they have some Mogerts. I've taken the Mogerts and I've rendered them into MOVs so that we don't have to put a Mogert over the footage because it just takes a long time. So I've rendered those into transparent MOVs so that we could just throw that over the top.
You can make a project preset. So, like, if you do something for, like, say you do a bunch of training videos for somebody, and it's the same guy on camera who needs a lower third. They like the song that you chose this one time, so use the same song every time. It's the same graphical in and out. You can put all those things in a Premiere project and
Save it.
Save it where it needs to be, and save it XYZ training video project template. And then when you open it up, just resave as and save it as that specific thing, and then you're done. And then you don't have to go find
all the stuff
and bring it in.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've made a project and put inside of it all of the graphics that we might need. I've basically rendered all of the graphics that we would use regularly so that we don't have to use Mogerts for them.
Or that are the current graphics.
Right.
If they change them all the time, just go in and replace it in that project. Like hey, we got a new logo. Perfect. I'll just go in here so I know this is the stuff I'm supposed to be using, put it in that project.
Intros are in there. Opens are in there. I do have some stuff that needs Mogerts and that has keyframing, like like for scene changes and stuff. And I've got a nest in there that has the Mogert with the keyframing and everything like that. So then all you have to do is go copy that nest and then drag it into your timeline, replace the text, and then it's already there.
Yep.
And that could save you 5 or 10 minutes if you had to do it every time. And also then, like, I could, if Clay hadn't worked on a project for this client before, I could give Clay this project and go, here's the project template. All the footage is in this place. It's already populated with all the graphics that they use. You'll find your intro, your open, your this, your that, your the other thing. When you do it, make this, put this graphic here, start doing it. Whenever you change a scene, use this graphic. Whenever the first time a person shows up, go pull their lower thirds here, boom, boom, boom. When you're done, put this outro. There's a export preset in there where how they want it to be exported. Use that, put it here, boom.
It adds a level of standardization to where, like, you do something for a client the first time and they approve it. It keeps you from having to worry about not building it different every time. Like, it's always the same every time. And then that then cuts down on your editing because it cuts down on the amount of changes you get back on an approval process. If all those things are already standardized, they like it every time, why not preset them or whatever? So you throw them in, then, okay, they're not going to worry about that. I know they like it.
Yeah. And, I mean, the closer that you can get a video to its final form when they review it, generally the fewer changes you're going to get, right? Because, I mean, one of the biggest changes that I think we get on every single thing is, like, if you send a client a rough cut and it doesn't have color, sound, and graphics, you will get a comment on the color looks flat, the sound is not leveled, and we need graphics. Even if you said, hey, this is the rough cut, we're just looking at story structure. I know the color is not there. I know that I've kind of leveled the sound, but it's not perfect, and the graphics are the last step. You'll still get a comment on it. So,
no matter how much you work with that client.
Yeah.
But, even sometimes we kind of just disregard that because we purposely didn't color it because we know, like, hey, they want this video under 12. We thought it was really good at 16, but just in case they want 4 minutes cut out of it, we didn't go in and color and do sound for 4 minutes of stuff that no one's going to end up seeing.
Yeah.
So we'll just leave it and be like, okay, they're going to say something about it. No point in wasting a day and a half coloring something that could be cut down in half and then all that stuff never gets seen that you colored or did whatever. But, yes, you are right.
Yeah, and, I mean, that's another thing that I guess I didn't really write down here, but you can decrease the amount of total time that you spent on an edit by doing it in certain stages. So I'm very particular about the stages. I don't like to do things out of the stages per se. Generally, how I like to do it is import, organize. If I am going to do any select sequences, I will do them then. Or like any additional organization or labeling or tagging or whatever. I do it then. Then I do my rough cut. And then once I'm through with my rough cut, I just make sure all the sound sounds to where you can hear what you need to be able to hear, but it's obviously not fully done. That's when I send it for review from the client. Then we go back and forth with reviews and changes. And in an ideal world, I do nothing except for change that rough cut until we get what's called picture lock. And that's when, okay, the form of the video is where it needs to be. We're not going to add any clips. We're not going to change anything as far as what clip goes where. We're not going to lengthen or shorten anything.
Music.
Everything is where it's supposed to be. At that point, that's when I do sound. And I'll go through and do all the sound, do extra sound design, make sure all of my levels are mixed properly, all that stuff. And then after I do that, I will do color. And I'll go color all the clips. And then when I'm done with color, I will then do graphics. And when I'm done with graphics, then I export it, and that's our final version.
I switch color and audio. I
Do
do
you?
color first because most of the time, by the time I've edited something and done 3 or 4 rounds of changes, I need to work on it, but I need a break from working on it. So color, I can mute all the tracks and just listen to music and chill and do color. And it gives me like a mental break from like hearing and watching the same thing.
Yeah.
And then I go back and I do the same way. But that's just a personal thing.
Yeah, and that'll save you cumulative time in the edit. Because like Clay was saying, if I go and do color and sound and spend X amount of time doing it, and then we have to rearrange a bunch of stuff inside of the edit, and I have to take out stuff and put new stuff in, well, the stuff that I took out, I technically spent time coloring and doing sound on. So that's more or less wasted time
Because now no one's going to see it.
Yeah. And then the stuff that I put in there, now I have to do sound and color for it again. So you kind of like get hit twice with it.
Right.
Now, sometimes it doesn't always work like that. I know a lot of the times, especially when we're working on deadlines, you just kind of take the L on it and you go, okay, I'm waiting for changes for this, that, and the other thing. So I'm going to go through and just like do color and sound so that when I get the changes, hopefully it's just taking things out.
Yeah.
Because if you're just taking things out, then basically it's like, okay, well, I lost a little bit of time because I colored and did sound on some stuff that didn't end up in the final cut.
Everything else is already done, though.
But
so.
it's already done. So as soon as I get changes, my turnaround time from getting changes to getting them that episode or that video is pretty quick. It's basically as long as it takes me to do the changes.
And usually on the simpler stuff that, those videos where the client's like, hey, this is what we want. Make this thing, and we shot it that way, so then there's really not many options. We can pivot left or right.
Yeah.
You can usually get away with that because other than this one shot holds too long or cut this 2 sentences out because it's repeatable, like whatever, you're not really losing much on the simpler stuff.
Yeah. And I would say, additionally, something that helps save time in the changes process is, you obviously can't do this with everything, but it's way easier to do changes and cut things down if it's not synced to music. So if you've got scenes that are heavily synced to a song and you have to go through and change those or change the song, it takes a lot more time than like if I've got a scene and like maybe there is music, maybe there's not music. Let's say there's not music at all and I got to go cut it down. Boom, easy. I just go cut it down. I don't have to like retime it with a song or anything. If I have a song, but it's just kind of like a sound bed, it's not really like driving the pace, or it's not driving the cuts.
You didn't edit on the beat yet.
Yeah. And I have to cut some of that stuff out or lengthen it. I might just be able to take that song, and especially with that remix feature, if it's a certain type of song, the remix feature doesn't work all the time. But
dude, the other day
sometimes it does.
Dude, the other day I cut something down by like 25 seconds and clicked that remix tool, and I was editing on the beat and shortened it with the remix tool, and everything still hit on the beat.
Ooh, how could that feel?
Someone give me an Oscars or Emmy, whatever the video version, the whatever. Give me something. Whatever it is, give me something.
He wants that ACE behind his
name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
American Cinema Editors.
Yeah, give me that.
He wants to be part of the guild.
I was like, oh, this is going to suck. Because it was in that tractor stuff, right? Did a lot of cuts. And I was like, boom, 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 boom. And then one held, and it was like, boom, 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 boom. I was like, oh, I'm going to want to stab somebody after this. And I remixed it. I was like, I'll just slide it right here, get it close. And if I have to shorten it manually, I will. And everything hit, and I was like, nice.
I try to, like, if I got something that needs done like that and I got to take a couple clips out, I try to do it in such a way so that when I slide everything over after deleting this, that, and the other thing, like it just still hits on beat.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Like you do this for long enough, every once in a while you're like, oh, look at that, it worked. But most of the time you're gonna be like, gotta do it again. Okay, last.
I'm all out of tips, so
I have one. I have one more tip.
Okay.
I was immature thoughts is what that was. The last tip, which I guess probably should have been earlier in this since we're kind of going like front to back through an edit, but is the same tip that you had at the front end was have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
So just like how it's easier to shoot when you have a plan, it is also easier to edit when you have a plan. And I have before, especially on like really complex edits, gone and like done what's called a paper edit and went through and planned out my scenes and how I wanted them to go and what content would fill those scenes. And that gave me basically a framework with which to tackle the edit on. And that's especially helpful when you have edits that are very open-ended. So like docuseries stuff, you almost got to kind of like figure out how you want it to play before you start editing
We
it.
do that with Chris Holcomb a lot with Bergara because
Yes.
he's really good in understanding about that. We do that with him a lot.
Yes. And even before the shoot, sometimes we'll
Yeah,
go do
we
that.
call him up like that Bergara bootlegger where he almost died, but didn't really almost die. Like we went into it with a plan, and then on the side of the mountain after we killed the elk at 8 a.m. on the first day,
Mm-hmm.
we called him. Luckily, had service. Hey, the plan has changed. This is what just happened. How would you like to see this go down?
Yeah.
And he's like, do this. That sounds awesome. Perfect.
Mhm.
Okay. Shot it that way. And then Ryer died for a day and a half, and I had to single shoot a lot of it. So when we got back in the edit, we were
Dude,
like,
do not eat the truffle mac and cheese in what town was that? It's the town they tested the nuclear bomb in.
yes,
What town is that?
whatever.
I keep wanting to say Alamogordo, but it's not.
No, I keep wanting to say Trinidad, but it's not because we were in New Mexico. But anyway,
If you go to a town and it's like where they did the first atomic bomb, and you go to a restaurant and there's truffle mac and cheese on that menu, do not eat it because that had me dying for 2 days.
but it's always
I can't even go into detail. It's too graphic.
It'll be 2 days after you ate it though. Like
Yeah.
the day after, you'd be like, oh man, that stuff slapped. Day 2 and 3, it's gonna be slapping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But got back and we were like, hey, Ryer almost died. Like I had to single shoot a lot of this. I got it, but there's not a lot of options. 'Cause I had to single shoot it, and he's like, that's fine as long as I know on the front end, that's fine. And I really didn't really have any changes because we were able along the way keeping people informed on like, hey, this is what happened. What would you like to do? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean that's I like to do it for like the UNG pilot, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Like you and I sat in my office and we knew like, okay, we've got these moments, these story beats that we want to hit. And like here's our overarching, this is what we want to get across.
We shot all the things
Yeah.
we wanted to shoot in our shooting plan.
Right.
Now let's go through and make an editing plan.
Yes, so we've got all of this stuff, but obviously we know not all of this stuff is going to make it. And like you could use this scene to demonstrate this, but you could also use it to demonstrate this. So let's go through and figure out, what's the best flow to these scenes? What are the best, like how do we best showcase this, this, and this, and what scenes are going to work best for that? And then you make that paper edit, and then you take that and you start editing. And that could help it gives you a direction. It gives you a structure and a framework with which to work inside of so that you're kind of aiming somewhere. If you have a point of aim and okay, well, this goes to here, goes to here, goes to here, and this is what I'm trying to accomplish with this scene, and this is what I'm trying to accomplish with this scene, and this is what I'm trying to accomplish with this scene, it just kind of helps you drive your edit, and it helps focus your thought process. And doing that can often make that edit go quicker because instead of you just trying to like find it willy-nilly as you go along, you've got an idea, you've got a purpose, you're looking for certain things, you're basically primed to find things that will work for that specific end goal.
Right.
And it can help things go a little quicker.
Right.
Now, take some time to do on the front end. You don't just get to hop right into the footage. Same thing with, going through all the footage and tagging and categorizing it. It takes some time on the front end.
But it's usually faster than figuring it out once you're halfway through or having to figure it out as you go.
Right. And in some workflows, like that extra time on the front end will save you time on the back end.
Right.
In some workflows, it's not. Like sometimes we do a lot of front end work, organizing and tagging and categorizing and keywording and stuff like that, and it works out because that type of project it's useful for. But other projects, it's not. You know, like one project you might have to look at all the footage. And another project, you might not have to look at all the footage.
Or you could storyboard an entire TV show and send it to the client, and they don't say anything, so you assume that they're okay with it, and then you edit to that, and they say, I hate the entire episode.
It's never happened. I don't know where Clay came up with that. Never had that happen to me. Certainly not twice.
By the same person.
Well, hey, you know, that is the thing about editing is you do it long enough and you're going to have an idea and you're going to think it's great and you're going to do the idea and then somebody else is going to think it's not great. And at the end of the day, you are going to do what the other person thinks is great, not what you thought was great.
Because ultimately their money's greater than ours is.
Mm-hmm. Which is why they're paying you to do it.
Exactly.
Because you want the great money.
Exactly.
Essentially. But, yeah, I mean, I think.
That was a good one. That was a good podcast.
Yeah. Hopefully there was some actionable information in there for you guys.
Yeah.
I know that there, you know, some of this stuff is kind of fuzzy. It's like,
There's
I wish I had like a, hey, do X, Y, and Z, and you'll cut down 5 minutes.
There's so much like, hey, it's situational dependent
Yeah.
stuff that it's like we can just give you. We don't want to like, hey, we'd love for you guys to deep dive into this thing, and it's like awesome. We can deep dive into it like what we experienced on this specific project.
Yeah.
But here's another project of the same magnitude where it was like 180 degrees from that. So it's so.
It's very hard.
It's wishy-washy.
It is. You know, that's why the YouTube headlines are always clickbaity. They're like, one tip that'll save you 15 minutes in Premiere every time. It's like, will it? Probably
And
not.
the tip is open Premiere and it will save you time.
Yeah.
And
Well,
they tell you that in minute 14 of a 19-minute video.
Oh, I just click. I don't do that. We ain't doing that.
Then I get my watch time. Absolutely not.
No. Another time-saving tip for you. This isn't a time-saving tip for you. Actually, this will cost you time. It won't really cost you time, but it will maybe help make you a faster editor. Is we do have a podcast class. Well, it's not a podcast class. It's just a regular class that was spurred from the podcast because we did the podcast and then people wanted classes and we started doing the classes. We have one of those, and that would be a great chance. Like, if you wanted to see some of these things in action,
June 5th to the 9th.
June 5th to the 9th. This June 5th to the 9th. 2024. Like, we can show you all these techniques. We can look at projects. You can show us projects that you've done, talk to us about how long it took to edit it, all that kind of stuff. And basically talk in detail about things that are specific to you, and help you specifically understand what might help you be better as an editor, be faster as an editor like we've been talking about in this episode, but just generally the class is geared towards helping guys and gals become better shooters, better editors, better producers, better content producers, better business people. And it's all very hands-on. It's all very personalized. And we like to make sure that we are catering the information to each person individually. And what is it? That's 4 days?
Show up the 5th whenever you want.
Yeah.
Leave the 9th whenever you want. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's 4 solid days, and there will be 4 of us down here. And we love to deep dive into any and all questions that you guys have. So if you have ever wanted to attend a production class, if you've been looking for a way to level up your skills, it doesn't matter what level you are, beginner, intermediate, advanced, or anywhere along that spectrum. Like I said, we tailor the curriculum to who's there and what y'all are wanting to learn about. So if you've been looking for something like that, shoot us a DM, send us an email, rednecktechpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll get you some information. We still have a couple of spots left, but I do know that the closer we get to the class, the faster those start filling up. So if it's something that you've been thinking about doing, or it's piquing your interest right now, definitely hit us up, and we will give you more information. But other than that, I think we are not all out of time, because we could keep talking if we wanted to, but that's going to be the end of this episode. Got anything else to say, Clay?
That's all I got to say about that.
All right, perfect. We out. Peace.
Oh.